Imagine for a moment that you are trying to count the stars in the sky. But you can't just look up. You have to write down the name of every single star on a slip of paper. Then you have to sort those millions of slips by color, then by size, then by brightness. Now, imagine that by the time you finish counting, 1 million new stars have been born and your count is already wrong. In the late 19th century, the United States government was facing exactly this nightmare. It wasn't stars they were counting, it was people. The American population was exploding, fueled by massive waves of immigration and industrialization. The data was piling up so fast that the bureaucracy was literally drowning in ink and wood pulp. The 1880 census took 7 years to tabulate by hand. 7 years. By the time they finished, the data was obsolete. And with the 1890 census approaching, experts predicted a catastrophe. They estimated it would take until 1902 to count the people of 1890. The system was about to collapse. Democracy, which relies on accurate representation, was running blind. But on a cold winter morning, December 9th, 1888, one man walked into the U.S. War Department with a machine that looked like a piano, crossed with a clock. The clerks laughed at him. The establishment doubted him. They didn't know it yet, but the moment he flipped the switch on that machine, the 19th century ended and the information age began. This is the story of Herman Hollerith and the day the world learned to compute. To understand why December 9th, 1888 is one of the most important dates you've never memorized, we have to look at the stakes. The United States Constitution mandates a census every 10 years. It's not just for trivia. It determines how many seats a state gets in Congress, how tax dollars are allocated, and how military strength is assessed. In the 1880s, the method for doing this was tallying. A clerk would take a census form, read a line that said male, white, born in Ohio, carpenter, and then put a tick mark on a tally sheet. It was mind-numbing. It was slow, and it was prone to human error. If a clerk was tired, or hungover, or just bored, carpenter might become blacksmith, or a person might disappear entirely. Enter Herman Hollerith. Hollerith wasn't your typical dusty academic. He was the son of German immigrants, a mining engineer, and a statistician who taught at MIT. He was brilliant, impatient, and hated inefficiency. While working at the Census Bureau as a young man, he watched this tallying process and thought, there must be a machine for doing this. But building a thinking machine in a world of steam engines is easier said than done. Hollerith needed an idea, a spark, and he found it in the most unlikely place, a train ticket. You see, in the 1880s, train fraud was a problem. People would steal tickets. To stop this, conductors used what was called a punch photograph. The ticket had descriptions around the edges: light hair, dark eyes, large nose. The conductor would punch holes next to the physical traits of the passenger. If a thief with a small nose tried to use a ticket punched for a guy with a large nose, the conductor knew it was stolen. Hollerith saw this and had a revelation. A person isn't just a name. A person is a collection of data points, male or female, native or foreign, literate or illiterate. If you could turn a person into a pattern of holes on a card, could you build a machine to read the holes? Hollerith's idea was radical. He would translate human lives into stiff paper cards, about the size of a dollar bill. But how do you count a hole? This is where the story shifts from bureaucracy to high-tech wizardry. Hollerith didn't just use mechanics. He used the cutting-edge technology of the decade, electricity. Here is how the machine worked, and I promise you don't need a PhD to get this. In fact, it's simpler than your toaster. Imagine a little cup filled with mercury, a liquid metal that conducts electricity. Above it is a spring-loaded metal pin. If you put a solid piece of paper between the pin and the mercury, nothing happens. The paper blocks the pin. The circuit is open. But if there is a hole in the paper, the pin passes through, touches the mercury, and zap, the electrical circuit closes. When that circuit closed, the electricity powered a small magnet that moved a dial forward by one number. Click. If you wanted to count all the farmers in Oregon, you just fed the stack of cards through the press. Every time a card had a hole in the farmer column, the dial clicked. He didn't stop there. He built a sorting box. If the machine read a card for a female, a specific lid on a wooden box would pop open automatically, telling the operator where to file the card. It was binary code, hole or no hole, 1 or 0, yes or no. Decades before the first digital computer, Herman Hollerith had invented the fundamental language of the digital world. But invention is one thing. Convincing the United States government to trust a machine with the fate of the nation, that is a battle of a different kind. By 1888, the pressure was mounting. The Census Bureau knew they needed a new system for the upcoming 1890 count. They announced a competition. 3 inventors were invited to prove their methods. But Hollerith wasn't just waiting for the official census trial. He needed a proof of concept. He needed to show his machine could handle complex, messy, real-world data. He found his testing ground at the U.S. War Department, specifically the Office of the Surgeon General. They had thousands of health records from soldiers that needed to be tabulated. On December 9, 1888, Hollerith oversaw the installation of his tabulating machine at the War Department. Picture the scene. The room is filled with career clerks, men who have spent decades counting by hand. They are skeptical. They are likely afraid this machine will take their jobs. The air smells of ozone from the electric motors and stale tobacco smoke. Hollerith, anxious but confident, watches as the operators take their seats. The test wasn't just about speed, it was about complexity. Could this machine cross-reference? Could it tell the Surgeon General how many soldiers had dysentery and were from New York and were under the age of 25? To a human, that takes minutes of searching. To the Hollerith machine, it took a fraction of a second. The operator places the card, pulls the handle, the pins descend, clack. The dials on the face of the machine jump, ding. A bell rings to signal the card is counted. The sorter box lid pops open. It was mesmerizing. It was rhythmic. It was the heartbeat of a new era. While the specific results of that December 9th installation were technical health statistics, the impact was immediate. The War Department clerks, initially hostile, were stunned. The machine didn't get tired. It didn't lose count. It processed data faster than any human being alive. This installation was the dress rehearsal for the main event, the census competition against his rivals, Pigeon and Hunt. When that final competition happened shortly after, the results were devastating. To capture the data, Hollerith's method took 72 hours. The nearest competitor, 100 hours. But the tabulation, the counting, was where the bloodbath happened. The competitor took 55 hours to count the data. Hollerith took 5.5 hours. He didn't just win, he obliterated the old world. Hollerith won the contract for the 1890 census. The government leased his machines, and for the first time in history, electricity coursed through the veins of the bureaucracy. The result was a triumph. The population count, 62,947,714 people, was announced in just 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Remember, the previous census took 7 years. Suddenly, the government could ask questions they never dared ask before. They could analyze data on family size, language, employment, and health on a national scale. This wasn't just counting anymore. This was data analytics. Hollerith had unlocked the power of big data a century before the term existed. But there is a twist in this story, a realization that connects this steampunk contraption to the device you are watching this video on right now. Hollerith realized that his machines were useless if they sat in a warehouse for 9 years between censuses. He needed to turn this into a business. In 1896, he founded a company. He called it the Tabulating Machine Company. He leased his machines to railroads to track freight. He leased them to insurance companies to track actuarial tables. He turned information into a commodity. In 1911, his company merged with 3 others to form the Computing, Tabulating, Recording Company, CTR. And in 1924, that company changed its name to something you might recognize: International Business Machines, IBM. When Herman Hollerith walked into the War Department on December 9, 1888, he wasn't trying to invent the computer. He was just trying to solve a traffic jam of paper. But look at the DNA of his invention. He took information and turned it into binary code. He used electricity to process that code. He built a system to input, process, and output data. That is the definition of a computer. The punch cards Hollerith designed remained the industry standard for computing well into the 1970s. If you've ever seen an old utility bill with those rectangular holes, you've held a piece of Hollerith's legacy. We often think of history as being made by generals on horses or politicians at podiums. But sometimes, history is made by a statistician in a quiet room, listening to the rhythmic click-clack of a machine, realizing that he has just given the world a new way to think. The digital revolution didn't start with a microchip in Silicon Valley. It started with a hole in a piece of paper in Washington, D.C. on a cold December day in 1888. So the next time you swipe your phone or search the web, remember the mercury cup and the punch card. We are all living in the world Herman Hollerith built. If you want to dive deeper into the fascinating history of how we went from punch cards to processors, I've pinned a list of incredible books in the description and in the first pinned comment below. What do you think was the most important invention of the 19th century? Was it the light bulb, the telephone, or Hollerith's machine? Let's debate in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey into the hidden history of technology, please hit that like button and subscribe. We have many more stories to tell.